So I'd like to start off this evening and draw attention to a great Arab, North African philosopher, historian, astronomer, a man by the name of Ibn Khaldun, who flourished from approximately 1332 AD through 1406, I suppose is the date traditionally associated with his passing. Ibn Khaldun is considered by many people to be the father of modern historiography. Wrote some very influential books and had a tremendous impact upon Western civilization and culture, sociology, historiography, and these sorts of modern approaches to the world. I draw attention to Ibn Khaldun because one of his great insights as historian has application to an understanding of ancient Near Eastern history, and also the way that the Book of Mormon is set up and organized, in a way that I'd specifically like to explore this evening through this presentation. So, through the course of his studies, Ibn Khaldun came up with a remarkable observation regarding the cyclical nature of human existence. Again, this is because of his Arab background and the fact that he was sensitive to this factor, which really does, in many ways, provide an accurate portrayal and description of the history of the ancient Near East, the world of the Bible. Ibn Khaldun saw the historical process of humanity as one constant cycle, cyclical change that was due primarily to the interaction between two distinct groups, the nomads and townspeople. Now, these two groups of individuals form, from Ibn Khaldun's perspective, the two poles for a mental map of sorts. Peasants are found in between the two categories, who end up supplying the town with food and revenue through taxation, handicrafts, and so forth. In contrast, then, to the townspeople, and the so-called civilized community, we find in history the nomadic people, who Ibn Khaldun sees as rough, savage, uncultured, and their presence, their existence, is always a threat to civilization. Okay? And the contrast between these two groups of people is one in which the civilized people experience the threat of nomadic invasion. The nomads who are much stronger, much more savage, become attracted to the lives and ease of civilized society, and so they end up descending upon the civilized state, conquering a civilization, and then ultimately becoming civilized in their own right. This constant turn of events that Ibn Khaldun was able to see in the history of the ancient Near East is very interesting to consider in terms of biblical stories. I would draw your attention to a recent article written by a Jewish scholar concerning the existence of two Adams in the Bible. So in the Jewish Bible Quarterly from the year 2000, a very interesting article written by a man by the name of Moshe Rice, and it's on pages 12 through 19, again in the year 2000. And the article is entitled Archetypes in the Patriarchal Family. And this particular Jewish author takes up this effort that is, has happened in recent years by some Jewish thinkers who have a desire to read the opening chapters of Genesis as a unity. Now, this is in contrast to the way, of course, biblical scholars, critical biblical scholars, approach the text, recognizing that the text itself involves two separate versions of creation. The one that is found in Genesis chapter 1 that runs all the way through to chapter 2, verse 4a, where the deity is specified by the title Elohim, which is actually the second historical creation account, influenced by the earlier account that now begins in our current Bible with Genesis chapter 2, verse 4b, and has as the divine name Yahweh, or Jehovah. Reading these as distinct and unique text is very important for the current understanding of the Bible from a scholarly perspective. However, ultimately, these two separate and unique traditions have been brought together by a single editor and stand as a whole. So reading the text, not from a diachronic perspective, but rather from a synchronic perspective, we can come up with some interesting literary observations in the way that, in the way that Moshe Rice does in this interesting article. Again, archetypes in the patriarchal family. Now, in his article, Moshe comes up with this interesting theory that, in fact, was actually explored by earlier scholars, but he develops it in a way that's quite fascinating, suggesting that there are two Adamic figures, two human beings, archetypes, in the opening chapters of Genesis. The initial Adam, who is the subject of Genesis chapter 1, who is a subduer, a hunter. And of course, this is based upon the understanding that deity at the end of that creation account specifically tells this human being created in his Tselem, or image, that he is to subdue, to conquer, to control the earth. This is followed then in the Bible is currently organized, with the second Adam, who in contrast to the first creature is not portrayed as a subduer or as a hunter, but rather as a servant thinker. So think of this then in a very nice literary observation, but think of it though in terms of what Ibn Khaldun suggested regarding ancient Near Eastern history as a cyclical series of events in which these wild nomadic figures were constantly in conflict with the more civilized and sedentary individuals from the ancient Near East, for it really is a reflection of what happens time and time again in Near Eastern history. Now, in the article, Moshe notes that both of these figures, as archetypes, the hunter and the thinker, both figures have worthy qualities. Clearly, they do. And they serve as archetypes from his perspective of humanity in general. And specifically, he illustrates throughout the course of the article as archetypes for the later patriarchal figures in the book of Genesis, Esau and Jacob. Esau, of course, who is presented as a great hunter, and Jacob, a man who is more civilized, who dwells in tents. Yet, they are constantly in conflict with one